Hello. Today I'm going to be discussing Assassin's Creed Odyssey and how to maximize your character's combat potential. There is a bulletarian full of information I'm going to share, so let's get right down to it. So, the majority of what makes your character powerful in this game derives from your consistency to increase your level. They have a microtransaction mechanic where you get increased XP if you just pay $10. But actually, it makes the game more fun if it's padding the hours that you play to go through the whole game and do quests, even if they're radiant quests. I mean, we don't like radiant quests, but we also do. So, you have to consistently go through those quests and level up. And there's a few reasons why it'll help you in the long run when you level up. Because when you get closer to level 99, there are fixed costs for certain upgrades like ships. So your ship upgrades still cost, say, maybe 4,000 obsidian. But over time, you start to get contracts that pay you a lot of obsidian when you're high level. You get a lot of wood when you're high level from cleaving ships. You get more wood in high level areas initially when you're low level, but you get more wood in general once you're higher level. You can get wood pretty readily in this game, so arrows are not a problem. There is that concern of resources, iron, all of this stuff you get more when you level up, but the cost for stuff like that stays fixed. Weapons, not so much, but keeping upgrades to get up to a certain level with an outdated weapon, that's kind of costly over time because it has a fixed rate. After a certain while, it doesn't matter if you're 5 levels above the weapons level or 30 levels, it still costs the same. So it doesn't make sense all the time to continuously upgrade your weapons. Instead, when you're leveling up, you want to just find new weapons that have good statistical bonuses attached to them and take those and not use the old ones, possibly sell them if they're just generic like purple weapons, randomized loot. What am I getting at? When you get close to level 99, your engravings that are already on the weapon, those statistical things I mentioned, they start to make it so that the obsolescence of your item doesn't mean it's as useless, because they get so good that the difference in armor rating starts to not matter when you get things like chance to ignore half damage, melee resistance. When you can tack those things on and to be like a glass cannon with critical chance, critical damage while at full health, all of these things will really help you so that when you get close to the end game, you're not going to need to keep discarding weapons and armor because they'll already be close to the max level, if not at it. Now, there are other things to consider. You have to have the clothing items, armor and weapons that will give you preset bonuses to your engravings. Will have statistical bonuses, and you want to have ones that are already on there so you can add one at the end of your choosing. As you get higher level, the automatic engravings that are on these items, these epic ones, they are better. So right now I'm looking at a mercenary's hood with 45% crit damage as an inborn engraving. So I was able to put on it 20% crit chance while at full health. It also happened to have 32% chance to ignore half damage. So these are both very good engravings. And its base engraving plus 20% warrior damage is already a good one as well. They all synergize well. So you have stuff like that. Another item I'm wearing is Brawler's Gauntlets. level 73, but I'm level 89 right now. 20% hunter damage, which I kind of switch in and out of using bows, but bows were very good in the early game when you're very squishy. You get 32% adrenaline per crit, and we'll get a lot of crits. Granted, adrenaline's not going to matter with the way this build is right now. 80% crit damage while full health. That's very good to have right on you. And I added 30% melee resistance. Then you got Athenian Tacits, which are a waste item. 20% warrior damage, 80% crit damage while at full health, 24% adrenaline per hit, and I added 30% melee resistance again. So those are two instances of melee resistance, melee being the kind of damage that you get hit with the most. You can dodge arrows as easily, but everybody's got a melee weapon. And more often you can dodge like the elemental grenades that get thrown at you. Then I got a mercenary breastplate. It's got 18% warrior damage, 48% total armor, which could stand to even be better. 14% health, 50 crit damage that I added onto it. Then finally, we got Spartan buskins, plus 20 assassin damage, 20%. 8% all damage, 80% crit damage at full health, and 20% crit chance additional while full health. So all of those things really add up. And the engravings that I add onto it, I got from a guy named Hephaestus. Generally with him, he lives in the northwest part of the map, and you just have to pay a boatload, a trireme load of your drachma, and just give it to him, and he'll give you these really powerful engravings. Incidentally, I got a legendary horse skin that has wings on it, so when it jumps off a cliff, it won't, die and temporarily be unavailable. That isn't too much of a big deal, it's just a little convenience. So my bow is the ornate bow. It's an epic bow. 20% assassin damage, 16% warrior damage, 8% critical chance, and basic arrows become fire arrows. This is a unique engraving that comes from the Bow of Hades, and you get it from a mercenary, which has a unique suffix of the Ashen Wake. I have a sword that I'm using. It's a 84 level, 22% warrior damage, 45% crit damage, 18% damage with overpowered abilities, which I don't necessarily need. It's the crit damage that's good there. And I have a legendary engraving from kind of an Easter egg weapon called the Blade of Yumminess. It's like a samurai sword that doesn't fit the time period. Plus 250% all damage, but cannot use abilities. Now, this is probably not very legit of a weapon. You could also use the Falx of the Olympus, and that gives you plus 100% damage, but it caps your health at 25%. That is not as advantageous because when you have such a small margin on nightmare difficulty of when you die, then when you get hit, it's a big pain. And also, you might be further away proportionally from getting your health back by any means if you have such little health and they take a chunk of your health so huge with just one swipe. In any case, plus 250% all damage, and then your crit, you're doing a ton of damage. You're just smashing right through your enemies with criticals all the time, and it only takes a couple hits. You just go in and you slice twice and then they're gone. In any case, the other weapon I'm carrying right now is a Machaira. 22% warrior damage, 29% all damage, 45% crit. So you see where the pattern is going. And with the melee weapons, there is really no right or wrong answer on which is the best, because sword's got its nice little speed, doesn't have as much stagger, but you can just get in there and get a couple crits in. My personal favorite's possibly the spear, just because not too many games give you the access to use a spear. And this one has these Hollywood-esque lunges that you can just do, where you run back and then you jab with it with R1 if you're on PS4, and you'll do like a jumping lunge that is very good at dodging. Actually, you do a roll and then you hit with it, and that's how you do it. So it's a good follow-up after dodging. Whether you're shooting as a bow user or in the midst of melee, dodging with the square is a very good ability to have. So here's a tabulation of all of the statistical benefits I have going on right now. 425% bonus warrior damage, 347% assassin damage, 327% hunter damage. The hunter damage and the warrior damage are pretty good. The assassin, for my purposes, not so much. Now you have to understand, it might sound crazy to not be able to use abilities, because early on, some of the abilities are really good. One I really loved was Overpower Strike, which just gives you this like explosive effect on your bow that you can use at any time. And some of the abilities in the chart are passive ones that'll give you bonuses to your damage, even irrespective of the drawback of that engraving. So you do give up on a couple things. As far as I understand, this engraving doesn't stop you from doing assassin attacks. Assassin attacks are pretty good, but they can be nerfed if you don't have enough damage, because they're not guaranteed kills like they are in the original games. But getting back to these statistics I have, there's certain damage modifiers I'm not running, like damage against Spartans, Athenians, animals. Those are too niche. They're too specific for one enemy, and you'd rather have something across the board that functions well. The crux of this build is to have critical damage and critical chance while at full health. And it's actually easy to stay at full health if you get in with some fast attacks on an enemy, you keep mobile, you dodge. You don't ever have to get hit and lose your health. And you don't have abilities, so it would seem like a big drawback. But this build is built so that you can have it all. You can have really good glass tank damage, and you can tank because you have melee resistance and chance to ignore half damage that are high. So if you get hit, you don't lose a ton of health at once, even though you're doing a lot of damage. Usually there's a trade-off in games. So let's look at some more of the advantages. I have plus 297% critical hit damage as a modifier, 26% critical hit chance while at full health, 72%. Critical hit damage while at full health, plus 573%. Critical hit chance while low health, 26, and 297. Those seem to be more incidental advantages because you can only have one or the other at a time. Either the low health one or the full health. The low health is just not as practical because you don't want to be on the verge of death. Now, I do have a bonus towards fire buildup and poison buildup. Actually, they're at 100% of their capacity, so that means that they're just at a regular level. But just having, if you're going to use bow, a fire damage benefit coupled with some of these perks, like having critical hit damage at full health so high and chance, means that you can make such quick work of mercenaries just by pelting them with arrows from afar. Now, with this build, I have 22.4% health bonus, 174% armor bonus, 68% melee resistance, 10% range resistance, and 42.8% chance to ignore half damage. As I had stated, those two things are hidden little benefits that would affect massively your survival chance, so that concerning yourself over do you have good armor, you don't need good armor. You have a raw statistical negator of most of your damage already, plus ignoring the half damage. So anyway, those are the present statistical benefits I have. You have to work your way up to them using leveling, and you just gotta get not legendary, but epic loot and some legendaries for engravings to reach this point. It's really a matter of RNG, because you just kind of have to look for the thing that has the right engravings built into it, and then you have to apply an engraving that is relevant, and you have to mix and match the engravings where they are applicable in places in your armor, so that you have them where they should be. Because certain armor doesn't allow an engraving, and another piece of armor allows that engraving, but not, the one that the other piece allows. So it's kind of trial and error. Right now I'll go over the respective places that you could find engravings available for a given slot of armor or weapon. So for melee weapons, the main engraving you would want would be crit damage out of all of them. But then for another, you might want one of these unique engravings for your offhand weapon, because both will benefit you, like the 250% all damage one. You might want to mix and match those in both your melee weapon slots. That is what you will want for melee critical damage. For bows, you will want perhaps 10% crit chance as your bonus, or you could already have the crit chance bonus on there and then just apply an elemental fire bonus, which would be preferable. For your headpiece, you can get 50 plus crit damage. That's very good, and that's the main benefit you would want. For the arm slot, you can get 30% melee resistance. That is perhaps the optimal choice, because like I said, melee affects you the most. Almost everybody is going to frequently hit you with melee, and you can dodge arrows, strange as that may seem, but you can also get plus 100% crit damage while full health. So you might instead want to find an arms piece that already has crit damage while full health, and then go for one with the melee resistance, or vice versa. It depends on the situation. For your torso slot, you want to have perhaps 50% crit damage as a bonus, or you can get a piece that already has 40% total armor, 48% in my case, but it can be higher than that. So you might want a piece that already has the total armor bonus, and then one with crit damage. For your waist slot, you can get a bonus to armor, but more importantly, you can get plus 100% crit damage while full health, and 10% crit chance. Both of these are very good. You want a piece perhaps with 10% crit chance and 100% crit damage while full health as your chosen engraving that you add onto it. Now, finally, we have the leg slot, and you're going to want to have plus 100 crit damage while full health and plus 20 crit chance while full health. So you may want to take either one of these, actually. Get like something with, depending on your level, maybe 80% crit damage while full health, and then your own engraving, 20% crit chance while full health. Now I'll discuss the present allocation of ability points that I have. My character is currently at level 89, and it's actually pretty spare on the abilities tree. I have but 1 point in Arrow Master, so I can craft paralyzing arrows, which makes it easier to knock out enemies if you want to recruit nation leaders or good mercenaries or polemarchs of military installations. Then I've got Archery Master. It's it's a statistical benefit, and as such, you want something that increases hunter damage, headshot damage, and most importantly, perhaps, from this tree is overpower bow strike, which, as I mentioned, often will charge up and shoot with your adrenaline and explosive effect. Just the spectacle of it is worth it. It kind of looks crazy when you've got like mercenaries chasing you in the streets and you shoot one of those. It's so like chaotic that the game is total fantasy that this would even be allowed, even in Greece at such a turbulent time as the Peloponnesian War. Now, for warrior, I have second wind, which is very practical. 1 point in that. It's 25% of max health. It can refill more with further upgrades in the story, but it is practical to have, yet my build has some mastery points that allow me to recover health as a proportion, maybe 3% of all the damage I do. So with the criticals I do and the frequency I do them, therefore you don't really need a perk like that, because you can quickly get yourself back up to full health, and then you're still doing criticals even when you don't have full health. So even though you're not maximizing critical damage, you're still getting fairly frequent criticals from your base rate, which is amplified, good critical damage, and all of that adds up so that you can reasonably regain your health just by attacking enemies in battle. Of course, with ranged, you can be a little more cowardly and do that from afar, which makes it even easier, but you can do it readily with melee. Another perk I have, similar to the archery master, is weapons master. 40% warrior damage, crit chance with all weapons by 10%. So these abilities do factor into your growth of power. Then I've got shield breaker when I do use the abilities, and you can just run up to enemies with shields and make quick work of their shields this way. Shields can be a nuisance, but it takes away their advantage. Then you got Gear Master, which at this level increases armor by 90%, reduces range damage, and enemies may stagger. So mostly you're just getting it for the armor bonus. It'll increase your survivability in the mid game or the early game. Then I've got overpower attacks, which you use up a fair amount of adrenaline, just like the shot, 3 bars, but you know, it's pretty good to have in the middle of like a conquest battle to whip around a spear and immobilize 3 enemies at once, knock somebody on their feet. Then for the assassin tree, I've got bonuses to Shadow Assassin, and Shadow Assassin will give you bonus knockout damage, so it gives you a larger margin to knock out mercenaries to recruit them. I always tend to recruit mercenaries most of the time rather than killing them when I think it's applicable. You can get the bounty for mercenary even without killing them, and some of them are really good just to have on your ship. There is an ability that I don't really use, but it's called Call to Arms, and one of your lieutenants, i.e. the mercenaries, they will just come into battle and distract your enemy. So that's kind of like a neat little niche nuance to the game. But more importantly, all the time when you're doing naval stuff, like taking ships, you'll have these powerful mercenaries that they use the bombs against you, they use the explosive arrows, and now you get them to help you just clean out ships. The AI works such that you still have to participate in the battle and do damage to progress, because I do believe that they jump back on the ship if there's no participation from the player. But of course, that's why I prefer knocking out enemies. Then there's critical assassination, which you just hold the button and you do 200% assassin damage. So assassin damage can be a good way if you're just trying to take like a pull a mark out. Then there's Stealth Master, which is very practical. Noise from movement, assassination is reduced. Enemy detection distance is minimal in crouch. And at night, assassin damage is increased. So that's definitely good to have. Now, I've got 12 free ability points. Level 89. I have that many points maybe of investment. I'd count 3, 4, 7, 8, 11, 12, 15, 16, 19, 20, 21. 21 plus 12 would be 33. So 33 points between the ones I have free and what I've invested in. Now, that would imply that I have 89 minus, in other words, I have like about 50 points. But I've invested into crit chance, crit damage, 8 points into crit chance, 6 into crit damage for plus 12% crit damage. That's in the hunter tree. And for warrior, I have plus 8.4% health at 5 out of 20 points invested, 8 ranks of total armor for 36% of a bonus, 7 ranks for 8.1% melee resistance, and 7.6% for armor penetration at 11 ranks, plus 3% damage restored as health, 8 ranks out of 20. The bonuses for these perks diminish over time, so unless I really like it, I don't tend to go past 8. And finally, for the assassin tree, I've got plus 6% crit chance while full health, that's 8 out of 20, 36% crit damage while full health, 10 out of 20, 10.8% chance to ignore half damage, 7 out of 20 ranks. So that gives you a pretty good idea when you add it all up of what you can do with your ability points, because when you have the engravings, you actually don't need to use all the abilities. Now, if you want, you can have a good variety of them, a panoply, if you will, but most of the ones you can just supplant with your character being powerful enough, and at that point they just become something you use for fun. One thing I'll note, for example, is Battle Cry of Ares makes no sense. If you have all enemy attacks are non-lethal for 10 seconds, but that only benefits you when you're in that mode for 10 seconds, that you have no health and they can't kill you with an attack. But the effect can wear off right in the middle of you getting in a flurried attack by an enemy, or you being left wide open by this berserker mode because you're getting right in the middle of enemies and then you die. So, as you can see, some you don't really need, and some make absolutely no sense to have. So, now you might be asking me, how would I even get from level 1 to level 99 on nightmare difficulty on a game like this? Well, of course, there's the tenacity. You just have to keep doing, like, quest and the radiant stuff and probably the story missions, but they might not offer enough just to get you up to a really high level without something that is continuous. However, in the late game you might find instances, that's when I found it, of the game repeatedly giving you war contracts in the capital city of one of the alliances, Sparta or Athens. So what's really good about this is normally you do these war contracts to kill some soldiers, and the war readiness drops in a nation, and then they're ready to be taken over, and you participate in a combat battle or not. But in this case, you just never have that happen because they're the capitals. So continuously you can keep doing those contract missions if they keep showing up, and they'll give you a ludicrous amount of XP. Much more proportionally for the amount of effort, which is minimal than what you do in the other missions. But there is a concern that when you do them, your wanted level rises and mercenaries come after you. That makes the game fun, no doubt. And this is probably one of the best ways to do it. But it kind of all depends on, I guess, the way the software, if they update it to get rid of that feature or bug, then you might not be able to access continuous war contracts just to kill soldiers, which is fairly low effort. There are other contracts in the game, some where you have to do stuff all over the map and then get a lot of points, some where you have to take out 10 forts, or some it'll show you the quality. If it's got gold around it, it's the best kind, and you want to do stuff like that to give you the most XP growth. Now, you might also supplement that with some pirating off the contracts. Better to do it with the contracts, but that'll give you more loot than XP and raw materials. And of course there are just random little contracts that don't have orichalcum, are not related to anything like that, but those types of contracts won't give you so much. So you kind of have to figure out for yourself what missions to do, so you don't have to spend a ton of time to get no XP, and you can spend less time to get more XP if you pursue the right ones. Now, there's the other aspect of this, not just the tenacity, but also what are the methods to survive against mercenaries, against most of the enemies in the game. Well, I don't know if I was the best at this game when I started. I didn't have the best equipment for sure. So I started out using the bow. And you could use the bow and run around, run away from enemies, use stealth in bushes. And that's kind of the key early on for a surefire way to progress and not get overcome by the enemy's combat difficulty. You have to really run around, dodge, and consistently pelt enemies with the arrows, and make use of some of the combat arts that you have, or abilities. Just the overpowered strike is really good when you get to the point where you can use it. You have to have a certain minimum level just to get to that tier. Now, I found later in the game I could start dipping into the art of doing regular combat with melee, but mostly it'd be hit and run style tactics with a spear, and eventually in the right situations, like in naval battles, you work up the strength, take on enemies directly. One thing you can do early on in naval battles when you're using a bow is to stand on the rigging of a ship, and then enemies that shoot you with arrows, they can't get you because the ship's constantly moving, so you go out of their range of their javelin or their arrow before it hits you. On the other side of that, though, your arrows often miss even when you're aiming because of the movement. Another way you can do it from across the side of the ship is to hide behind the frame that is before the captain's wheel, and something like that, or where the captain stands in the first mate. You hide behind there, and nobody can hit you with arrows if you just stay on your feet. If you don't move at all, they might find a way to hit you. But that's a good way, reasonably, to take out some of the enemies and then board the ship. and running around is key in this game. So when you're dealing with mercenaries, you can play like a game of cat and mouse where you're mainly trying to get rid of them as a threat to you, but sometimes recruit them. So it's a key thing to get on your horse and ride around them with a bow and hit them, or just run away from them consistently and use the bow with no one to dodge. And again, the overpowered strike and just consistently hitting them with arrows. Once they're low in health, then you just want to lose their detection of you and then sneak up on them and knock them out. Also, you can use paralyzing arrows. Now, finally, when you get into the mid part of the game, you can use melee consistently. You just have to kind of watch out for curveballs, like when an enemy throws a grenade at you that explodes on impact. You have to learn that dodging is your friend. And over time, eventually, as you can see, you'll get good enough weapons with the engravings and attributes, stat bonuses, that'll make it so that you can not only survive any encounter, but be unstoppable in any encounter, like Achilles. So that pretty much covers all the ways you can improve combat. I don't want to say exhaustively that I've covered everything. Ships are very straightforward in the fact that you upgrade them. There's no decision making, no choice of engravings. It's just resources. And you can complement them with mercenaries that combine their abilities, like 4 legendary mercenaries that have bonuses to ship health would be effective. Half of this game is planning to have better statistical advantages, and half of it is smart tactics in the moment to increase your survival. It's got a pretty good pace, being rapid sometimes, having to run through cities. In that sense, it shines as an Assassin's Creed game, and pretty good open world exploration. You basically have to do things like, when a bunch of mercenaries are after you in one city, climb on top of a temple, pelt them with arrows from above. You have to get creative a little bit, and that way you can take being besieged by multiple enemies, have them lose you, have one go around the other side of the temple, knock the one out that was weakened by the arrows, so on and so forth. If you like this video, thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
Take your fate in your own hands.